stuck in it every 4 words. Most of the intervening 3 words of their conversations dealt with unhappiness about food, mail, time in the bush, and girls they had left behind in high school. Mellas swore he'd succumb to none of it. This black kid wanted out of the bush to have his recurrent headaches examined, and some of the brothers were stirring things up in support. The gunnery sergeant thought the kid was malingering and should have his butt kicked. Then another black kid refused to have his hair cut, and people were up in arms about that. Mellas was supposed to be fighting a war. No one at the basic school had said he'd be dealing with junior Malcolm X's and redneck Georgia crackers. Why couldn't the Navy corpsmen just decide shit like whether headaches were real or not? They were supposed to be the medical experts. Did the platoon commanders on Iwo Jima have to deal with crap like this? As Mellas plodded slowly up the hill, with Fisher next to him and Hamilton automatically following with the radio, he became embarrassed by the sound his boots made as they pulled free of the mud, fearing that it would draw attention to the fact that they were still shiny and black. He quickly covered for this by complaining to Fisher about the squad's machine gunner, Hippie, making too much noise when Fisher had asked for the machine gun to come to the head of the small column because the point man thought he'd heard movement. Just speaking about the recent near encounter with an enemy Mellas had not yet seen started his insides humming again. The vibration of fear that was like a strong electric potential with no place to discharge. Part of him was relieved that it had been a near miss, but another part acted peeved that the noise might have cost them an opportunity for action, and this peevishness in turn irked Fisher. When they reached the squad's usual position in the company lines, Mellas could see that Fisher could barely contain his own annoyance by the way he nearly threw to the ground the 3 staves he'd cut for himself and a couple of friends while out on the patrol. These staves were raw material for short-timers' sticks, elaborately carved walking sticks, roughly 1.5 inches in diameter and 3 to 5 feet long. Some were simple calendars, others works of folk art. Each stick was marked in a way that showed how many days its owner had survived on his 13-month tour of duty and how many days were left to go. Mellas had also been anxious about the sound Fisher had made cutting the 3 staves with a machete, but he had said nothing. He was still in a delicate position, nominally in charge of the patrol because he was the platoon commander, but until he was successfully broken in, he was also under the orders of Lieutenant Fitch, the company commander, to do everything Fisher said. Mellas had accepted the noise for 2 reasons, both political. Fitch had basically said Fisher was in charge, so why buck Fitch? Fitch was the guy who could promote Mellas to executive officer, second in command, when Second Lieutenant Hawk rotated out of the bush. That would put him in line for company commander, unless Hawk wanted it. A second reason was that Mellas hadn't been sure if the noise was dangerous, and he was far more worried about asking stupid questions than finding out. Too many stupid comments and dumb questions at this stage could make it more difficult to gain the respect of the platoon, and it was a lot harder to get ahead if the snuffs didn't like you or thought you were incompetent. The fact that Hawk, his predecessor, had been nearly worshipped by the platoon did not help matters. Mellas and Hamilton left Fisher at 2nd Squad's line of holes and slowly climbed up a slope so steep that when Mellas slipped backward in the mud, he barely had to bend his knee to stop himself. Hamilton, bowed nearly double with the weight of the radio, kept poking its antenna into the slope in front of him. The fog that swirled around them obscured their goal, a sagging makeshift shelter they had made by snapping their rubberized canvas ponchos together and hanging the ponchos over a scrap of communication wire strung only 4 feet above the ground between 2 blasted bushes. This hooch, along with 2 others that stood just a few feet away from it, formed what was called, not without irony, the platoon command post. Mellas wanted to crawl inside his hooch and make the world disappear, but he knew this would be stupid, and any rest would be short.